Hi, I'm Steve Podmore. Well, to address the global goals at scale and speed the world over, it is critical to innovate to create better methods of funding all of the activity we need to address them. Specifically, we've got to remove some of the most important and damaging investment bottlenecks and widen investment gaps. Especially, we've got to address what I refer to as the intelligent access to capital challenge, which is otherwise known or referred to as capital formation, capacity building, or early stage investment. It's very simple. Unless we can fund a volume of new transactions and ventures and companies and infrastructure projects and do so at much greater speed, then we are nowhere in respect of a post-pandemic recovery and addressing everything from poverty to climate change to feeding a growing world population and doing so with minimum or negative effects on the planet. We've got to be replenishing, not extracting. And we're just not scratching the surface on what we could be doing. The issue is to create a pipeline for later stage investors of opportunities that they seek. That pipeline just cannot be created without tackling the access to capital challenge and addressing it properly and intelligently. To put it simply, to eat the fruit, you've really got to water the root. And without doing so, the reality is our financial markets, our economies are just not working, nor would they work. Finance is going to big business and speculative markets, but it isn't going to the real economies, and it's not going to the innovation that we desperately require. Or where it is going, it's going with a trickle, and the follow-on investment rounds or earlier investment rounds are just absent. And where they do exist, they exist in perhaps Silicon Valley or other parts of the world. But really, it's a trickle. It's a tiny scratch on the surface of what's required. And what is required is not just capital, but the meaningful help and support that can help educate and stretch the ambition and the potential of high-impact entrepreneurs everywhere. The reality is, existing institutions and fund types, such as venture capital and private equity, just don't meet this need. Neither does impact investment as it's currently constituted. And we just don't have the time to indulge in the kind of cherry picking and procrastination that we are doing. Not all of us. Many strive for more, but are stifled. So what we have to do is we've got to find new systemic ways to invest in things that can collectively deliver financial returns and the jobs and impacts that the world is so desperate for. Now, while there will be many ways of funding the SDGs, it's my belief that one of the most important is to reinvent how fit-for-purpose funds are raised and how they're deployed. As part of my development of the model for Transform Global, what we call the Sustainable Innovation and Development Bank, I've done just that. I've devised something called the SDG 360 Game Changer Fund, which at £9 billion target at launch, it would be the largest impact investment fund raised to date. That's if it was raised today, and hopefully it can be raised within a short period of time, relatively short, approximately a year from launching and raising the initial equity into Transform Global to actually getting to the point where we believe we can raise the fund. So separately, I will explain how it will be raised in a different presentation. But in this presentation, I'm going to focus on how innovations in how the proposed SDG 360 Game Changer Fund would be deployed, how that capital would be deployed to help tackle these critical intelligent access to capital challenges that I mentioned. So as discussed, I'm going to explain how the SDG 360 Game Changer Fund, how it can be deployed, and some key innovations in the fund design that mean it can get to where it could have the greatest impact and do so in a way that's highly attractive for investors, stakeholders, investee companies, everybody involved. So we'll get right into it. Well, this is what we call the butterfly basket portfolio design. It's a breakthrough in portfolio design and innovation. And the colored intersecting triangle that gets larger or starts larger and gets narrower, that represents the numbers of organizations that would receive capital from this particular fund every investment cycle. We'll cover this later, but an investment cycle would be every 3 years, and over time it would, or this was when we launch, and over time it would reduce to being over 2 years, and every cycle would be every year. And it represents a large number of small entities. So the blue intersecting triangle represents the size and the amount of capital. So as you can see, what happens is many investments start on the left, and they go through multiple stages to get to a small number that get to the right. So many get relatively small investment of £1 million. We'll cover how that is made in a moment. And it goes through stages of 4 and then 12, all the way up to investment rounds that can be as large as 360 million into a particular round. And this design is designed really to do the capacity building in early stage that is normally split into different investor groups. It's normally seed and angel and venture, and then private equity or other market investors would be coming in a much later stage. Here, we can do it all. We can do seed and angel, venture, and private equity in a very progressive way, a very progressive manner. Well, the butterfly basket, as we've said, is a huge breakthrough in portfolio design. And let's just talk about that for a moment. What is a portfolio? Well, I believe it's very simple. It's where you have enough investments that are diverse enough to balance risk and return and impacts that can be greater or lesser. Challenge with an awful lot of fund types as they currently constituted is they're too small to have a real portfolio. Many investment managers, many venture capital funds might do 2 or 3 or 4 investments in a year. Earlier seed funds might do more, but they don't provide the follow-on capital. And this really means that they don't have a portfolio, and they also they need to be operating in markets that either have enough seed and angel and early stage investors that they can then cherry pick what they want to get into, or and ideally enough liquidity and late stage investors that they can get follow-on investment and ultimately provide exits and hopefully build great companies. Too many investors are interested in just getting the exit, not actually building great organizations. And with what we're interested in, it's not just great organizations, it's great and highly impactful organizations that are also well governed. So a portfolio is really quite simple. It's enough to be able to balance your risk and return and your impacts and your geographies potentially where you're operating in. So for that, it's very simple, you need scale, and this solution provides scale. So in this, we're going to cover structure, which we're talking about now, the deal flow we'll talk about in a moment, and the design throughout the presentation. Okay, so it's really important to look at where does the deal flow come from for this particular solution. Well, as you may be aware, Transform Global as a model for a sustainable innovation and development bank, part of what we'll do is create our own platforms. One is fundingtheGlobalGoals.tv, which does what it says on the tin, essentially ultimately a TV channel for everything to do with funding the global goals, which will provide outreach and provide an awful lot of marketing support just by the very nature of running the channel. But also BIGCrowd, the BIGCrowd platform is designed to be a collaboration and funding platform using crowd-powered incentive prizes and powerful awards. And those prizes can also be funded by donors or governments or sponsors. But the main business is really using a subscription model to drive volumes of subscribers who want to participate, who can also earn awards and rewards and get meaning from the platform. They can learn about things that they really care about, and they can help them in multiple different ways. But that platform, where we will be creating prizes and awards that are worth 3.6 million sterling for everyone we give, paid over 3 years, so 100,000 sterling of cash and governance and organized help and support every month for 3 years. The BIGCrowd platform also doubles up to provide, not only to provide the help and support to the game changers who apply and potentially win those awards, and those who don't win also get to showcase what they're doing and get help and support. Those awards are designed to really help those game changers accelerate their activity. It can be into for-profit and not-for-profit initiatives, but the for-profit ones that are seeking additional capital, that capital could come from the SDG 360 Game Changer Fund, or indeed the bank could also help arrange it or raise it from other parties. So in addition, we have marketing and outreach. Again, scale helps. If you've got a large amount of money to invest, and if you're doing it into the kind of deals that we will be doing, it will create a great deal of publicity. And part of what we will be doing is working very, very hard to market what we expect, what we're looking for, the benefits of working with the team and with this particular investment vehicle. And that we anticipate will generate a lot of incoming deals. Now, of course, we have to have an ability to filter those deals, and that's where we will be using the BIGCrowd platform and the technology it develops to help filter, using our whole network, those that are meaningful and meet our criteria and those that are not. So that gives us a great deal of proprietary marketing and outreach and the technology that helps process it. In addition, we'll be working with other impact investment funds. Now, many funds, as many who might be watching this presentation know, they have a sweet spot. They might invest between 2 and 4 million sterling or dollars or what have you in a particular geography. So it might be a UK fund or a sub-Saharan African fund, and they might be doing water or agriculture or ag tech or a range of investments. But rarely do you find something that is as broad as this vision. And the scale enables us also to have speciality. There will be many specialist investment managers and supporters and consultants and those who provide technical assistance inside the fund. So although it's broad, it isn't that we don't have many specialists or won't have many specialists as part of the model. But what this enables us to do for other funds, we can essentially handle their non-core deal flow, meaning things that they cannot invest in or don't wish to for whatever reason, but still might be valid. And equally, they get to participate either with the co-investment rights further on. We're essentially leading and managing the deal as this particular strategy in this fund is designed. But also we can give them opportunities that are relevant. So these are symbiotic relationships we have the potential not just to create, but to manage. And again, to manage these relationships, you need to be marketing and talking to these people all the time. It helps to have a lot of money to be able to do that. But also university and corporate venturing, it's very similar. A lot of ideas, a lot of students, a lot of incredible professors, not always the right kind of capital. We also have partners and professional services firms, so accountants and lawyers, but also many consultants, many corporate partners that may be part of the model for whatever reason. It could be they're providing incubation space. It could be that they are helping with the due diligence, but they also are often a source of deal flow that will be active in managing. And then we also have acquisitions and investments. Again, part of the model to create what we call a sustainable innovation and development bank, Transform Global, and how we will capitalize it, as we'll explain in a moment. Part of our model is to stitch together the ultimate impact investment organization all over the world. And that will include making a number of strategic acquisitions. That will be of boutique investment managers or advisors, corporate finance houses essentially. It will also include those that are in the impact space around marketing to the investor groups, conferences and media, and also impact measurement. So the idea, quite simply, is some of these organizations we won't acquire, we'll just partner with, but many will acquire to bring the talent into one organization and to really enable them to be fully motivated and have all the help and support they require to deliver alongside the fund and alongside the bank. And then foundations and NGOs. And those foundation and NGOs, they can be involved in multiple different ways. So as you can see here, we've moved on and we're showing really the first investment cycle, the first round, which, as we've said before, would be £1 million sterling. Those would be 360 investments of 1 million every 3 years. And over time, that would reduce to every 2 years. And over time, that would be every year. Now, of course, this will take a little time to upscale the talent and the capability to make this volume of investments, but we intend to do it pretty quickly compared to what could be the case. This doesn't have to take years and years, and part of the model for fully capitalizing the bank enables us to, and making the acquisitions enables us to provide the talent that will enable this. So as you can see, the first investment actually is £500,000 of cash and £500,000 of organized and strategic help and support. And that could include legal or technical support, strategic market support, outreach, customer acquisition. There's a whole range of areas. Certainly talent will be central to it. And all investments, the first investment we make with any organization will be £1 million. It won't be the larger rounds unless it's in the Special Opportunities Fund, and we'll cover that separately. So these £500,000 investments of cash, that can be topped up with co-investment that we raise from elsewhere, but the maximum we would commit is £500,000. The reason for doing this is really important. And while some might say we just want the million, and that's okay, the value of that additional help and support also helps us augment intelligence. It helps us collectively work out who has the greatest potential to invest at the following, or for us to invest in the following rounds. It's pretty important for the organizations as well, because it enables them to compete in fair terms. And it gives them the right of reply. It gives them the ability to really showcase what they're doing, the depth and the scale of their vision, their capability, but also what they really need to build quality organizations. Are they the right people? Do they have the right ethics and motivation? And I believe you only know that over time. You only know that if you're working closely with those organizations. It's not really about their past or their present. It's about their future. And you have to really build that together to a degree. Also, not all organizations will need, tens of millions or the larger rounds. Many won't need more than a few million or in some cases less. But we're looking for things that are scalable, that are replicable. They don't need to be building a mega organization. It could be that their technology or their business model is ripe for replication. So you scale through funding local affiliates or distributors or partners all over the world, not necessarily building a mega company. You might have an open source type model or a franchise type model. So the key with this business is really about creating a system that can invest in entities that can scale, and some of them will partner with other investee organizations that are part of the family, part of the portfolio. So from those 360 that get $1 million, 90 of them, so around about a quarter, and it's important to say these are averages. They won't always be exactly the numbers that we're talking here, but the principle is around about a quarter will get a follow-on investment round, which consists of 3 million of hard cash and 1 million of organized help and support. Now, the reason for this, again, is it helps us follow on and provide continuity with as we're seeing the organization build with additional capital. It helps us track what they're doing to a degree. We won't micromanage, but we will be there. And this is about tailoring the support to the need. It isn't a one-size-fits-all. It's about having, and again, scale is required here. So we're building a support organization, and it will be not just on our own. We'll be working with partners, but there will be core teams that are big enough so that we really know what we're doing and we're tracking the support that happens through. It could be marketing partners or sales partners or training or talent. The key is what we're doing is we're working very, very hard to ensure those entities have best-in-class support. And although it's covered in a separate presentation, we're doing a similar thing for BIGCrowd as well. The prizes that will be on offer for BIGCrowd, which is part of the model for the bank, they would be 20,000 of cash per month, 10,000 of governance, but £70,000 a month would be spent on organised help and support, with the goal of helping those entities raise whatever capital they really need to scale optimally. So in a similar fashion, what we're doing is really getting close. We're helping them, and we're recognizing it as these organizations build, the need for that help and support from us directly diminishes, although clearly they will get that with advisory board members and board members as part of the investment management team. But they're building their own HR functions and they're building their own tech. So the need for us to directly deploy for free as part of the deal is reduced as the investments get larger. So those first two stages, you can see over every investment cycle, £450 million of investment would be made, and 270 million of support would be made. So as we said, that would be every 3 years, then every 2 years, and then every year. This is the order of magnitude. And of course, this will be spread through regional offices around the world. It will be in our regional headquarters and our global headquarters. And also it will be delivered virtually, as we are living now in a hybrid world. We will be optimizing our on-premise and off-premise and virtual solutions so that we really are close enough together to get to know one another, particularly when the pandemic has ended. But what we won't be doing is forcing organizations to be with us and part of the incubators all the time. It's not necessary these days. So now we come to the follow-on round. So essentially 30 of those 90 that have had 4 million, plus the million that they previously had, they would then have an investment round of £12 million. There's no organized help and support attached. It's just the investment. But it comes with clearly help and support as part of the family and part of the portfolio, and with a investment manager responsible for each particular deal, and with other help and support that we will provide, but not as part of the actual investment round at that time. Now, it's also important just to mention values. This system means we don't need to squeeze every ounce of equity out of every deal at the earliest stages. We know there will be many failures at the first stage, but those failures sometimes present an incredible opportunity because they can fail for the right reasons. They can fail because the technology was carbon positive, for example, as opposed to carbon negative, or it turned out not to have the market benefits that was at first believed. And that's okay, providing we're educating the people involved and really supporting them, because many of them can launch a business again that we might fund with the additional knowledge and experience and understanding, or indeed the teams and individuals can work for other parts of the portfolio. We'll be really working hard to make sure we're monitoring the talent and the not just casting people aside as often occurs, but really nurturing. And clearly, this is about people with the right attitude and the right attitude and the right attitude. If people are willing to learn, if people are honest, if people are happy to recognize their mistakes or shortcomings, but work in teams that make up for them, then this is really the kind of thing that we need. Also, those that are really understanding the governance and impact objectives and are willing and able to pursue those objectives as well. We're not looking for individuals or teams that are only in it for the money. We're looking in it for people who want to solve problems at very significant scale. So going back to the failures at the first and second stages, that's okay. That's part of the discovery process. In fact, we have to embrace that. But what we want to do is minimize it through everything we're doing with that help and support. So we get to the 30 that have 12 million. And these are the ones that have the opportunity to scale. Now, again, many having at that point had 17 million of capital from us, and they might have had capital from other sources as well. They're getting to the point where they are really having impacts and they're positioned to scale, but they're all competing for these next rounds. So again, investment can follow as soon as is practically necessary to build up, to scale up, to go into manufacturing if that's the case, or to partner with ideal marketing or manufacturing or distribution partners. We want to be operating and helping these organizations operate efficiently. If they don't need to do manufacturing or distribution themselves, then there's no need. Then we don't want them to be inefficient. But if it's something where there is a need to own a process, for example, from start to finish, then we'll support them and back them with capital that is efficient. Now, at these stages, we might be able to add debt, and we'll be working hard. And as part of the bank, we'll be working to add the most efficient and the most cost-effective capital. Equity is often the most expensive, but as one knows, one has to really properly get the capital structure right, and equity is a very important part of that. So as you can see, around about half will then get another 60 million, and they're competing at all stages, to justify, and they can get capital from other sources as well. They're not tied to working with us. We want the value and the values that we bring, and the speed and the capability to really warrant our investment in them, and for them to want it. But also we want to be efficient with the capital as well. And if we don't need to put that 120 million in ourselves, if that can come from third parties or co-investors, and we can use our capital elsewhere, that's so much better. It depends on, again, this portfolio approach. What is right for the entire portfolio? So by putting all of those rounds to that point, or as you can now see, the follow-on round, the following round for one of those entities would be 360 million. Now, if that is most efficient, if we know that by doing so we could make 2 or 3 or 4 billion on that investment, that would help justify and pay for many of the other investments that we make, then we would do so. So it really is about capturing enough of the upside and managing also the downside risk. So that's what this butterfly basket portfolio structure is about. And you can see the white arrows to the right. This is about creating exits that are sensible. Some of them, if they're very cash positive, might not need exits, and that is okay. We can build lasting, amazing organizations as part of this strategy too, where we're building value. We might have exits through public markets, but ultimately it's about creating a structure so some we can take exits from and some we can hold for very long periods of time. So now you can see that from those that got those 360, every investment cohort that get the 1,270,000, that is all we will invest. We might help them with other sources of capital as a service of the bank, the investment bank. Those that get the 90 that received the additional 4 million, well, only 60 of them would have had a total of 5. 18 would have had 17 million, and so on. So you can see that 6 have had 47, 3 would have had 107, 2 would have had 227, and 1 would have had 587 million pounds. So this is really about scale and also about building opportunity all over the world. So now, in addition to the main fund, We have the Special Opportunities Fund, where the average deal size would be 40 million. Again, that's 360 invested every cycle, every 3 years, every 2 years, every 1 year, as time progresses, getting to that 1 year investment cycle over essentially 6 years. The 6 years, it would be investing 360 million per year to these Special Opportunity Fund deals. And this is where there's opportunity for exceptional impact and exceptional return. This is outside the scope of the direct investments that we make in the fund, where we have to invest first the 1 million, then the 4, then the 12, etc. This is where we can, and a small team operating inside the umbrella investment management business, SDG 360 Fund Management, will manage this capital in conjunction with third-party advisors and other investment funds. And this will be investing into other catalytic financial opportunities, where we might be investing into another fund at its general partner level, i.e. the management company level, or indeed the LP level into the fund itself, or a hybrid. It could be where we're operating in the crypto space, in not necessarily speculation in one type of cryptocurrency or another, but where we're helping build the pipes, really the infrastructure for this sector that will be very significant. It could also be in other platforms. It's basically where there is an opportunity to deliver, as we said, exceptional return, but do things that are also strategic to the rest of the portfolio, that might provide co-investment capability or raise significant funds alongside, and that can invest alongside either into the broad SDG 360 portfolio or elsewhere to tackle impact challenges of real scale. Then we also have, and this is an interesting characteristic, we have an investment from the fund, the 9 billion net fund. When it is raised, we'll make an investment of 360 million into Transform Global itself. And this helps align all interests. It means that the fund itself, those investors who are investing in the fund, have an upside should Transform Global as an organization succeed. It means that Transform Global is well capitalized to help the success of the fund. And you see the little arrows coming in on the slide. Those little arrows are to provide co-investment capability, co-investment raise, or helping facilitate exits, appropriate and timely exits for the portfolio when they are required. So the idea is, by having that investment that is hardwired to be made when the fund is raised into the bank that would have previously raised rounds before. We'll talk about that in a separate presentation, but it's the initial 15 million of equity, then a 90 million of equity, and then another 360 million of equity. What that enables is, it means these investment or investors' interests are all aligned. And because of the structure of the fund, and I've talked about this separately, but I'll talk about it again. This is an evergreen fund structure, so it's designed to list within 4, 5, 6 years of launch. It isn't a 10-year fund structure, as is typical in venture capital. So what this brings to the party is a structure that is very attractive to institutional investors, to sovereign wealth funds who want an indefinite holding period to match their liabilities. They have long-term liabilities, so they don't often want their money back. They want to be able to generate long-term returns, but they do want liquidity should they need it. So it's kind of an interesting scenario. They need liquidity sometimes within a few years, sometimes 15 years, but they're not obligated for it to have that liquidity. So a 10-year fund structure really isn't what they're seeking most of the time. It's often in their alternative assets. Whereas this particular fund that is designed to list means they have the liquidity, or they have the ability for the long-term holding, and the strategic benefits of doing what we're doing that can open an awful lot more opportunities for them. So yes, it's also, as I mentioned, the structure. It's a typical venture or private equity structure is a 2 and 20 10-year fund structure. So 2% of the assets under management cover the operational costs and annually, and 20% of the returns essentially go to the people, often the senior people in the general partner or the investment manager. We're doing something very different. There will be a 2% of assets fee to cover the people and the infrastructure and a large number of people required to manage a fund of this size. But what we will not be taking is 20% of the carried return. Excuse me. How we will be compensating and motivating everybody is options, share options in that to be listed organization. So they will be tied to impact. So the individuals really are heavily targeted, and the organization is heavily targeted on the impacts, measured impacts that it creates. But they're also targeted on the increase in the net and gross asset values and the overall performance of the fund. And people can become very well compensated, but in line with investors being very well compensated and in line with the impacts generated. So it's important to say that and to explain why having the bank well capitalized, as well as the fund and its fund manager that will be owned by Transform Global. This is explained on the introductory presentation, how they're all aligned and their interests are aligned. So as we see here, that's 2.9 billion invested every investment cycle, every 3 year, 2 year, every 1 year. You can see here this first investment cycle, and you see the stagger. So the 90 million or 90 times 4 million investments, they start a few months after the million investments, and the follow-on rounds do the same. So that first cohort could take 6 years to be fully invested. The second cohort starts in year 4, and it could take 1 to 5 years to be fully invested. And then the third one, it starts in year 6, and it takes 3 years to be fully invested, or 4. So you can see this is why we call it the butterfly basket portfolio structure. It's a basket of investments, and it's shaped like a butterfly. But importantly, what it is also is it's like an institutional backbone, doing early, middle, and late in one fund structure, enables other investors to invest safely and when it makes sense for them. It enables us to capture enough of the return. It's really good for the management and the teams in the organizations we're investing in. It gives them certainty that if they perform, they can get the capital they need. It takes an awful lot of time to raise money normally, and this speeds up the process, and it means that they can be putting their time into running their organizations and strategizing and getting the help and support our ecosystem provides. So we think it's an intelligent portfolio structure and quite a breakthrough. So all parts funnel and filter and connect, and it can create this progressive, intelligent deal flow pipeline. So as you can see, we've got these 360 investments of money and risk equity and support, and they're competing through multiple stages for the much larger rounds, if that is what they require. Many won't need more than a few million. But the whole point here is it enables us to attract those that are most ambitious from anywhere in the world, and other funds and parties and partners that want to be part of this as well. So it's about creating an ecosystem. This includes the many investment banks, the commercial investment banks, the multilateral development banks, and other parties, other investors that want to participate. So as you can see, it's not just about tolerating risk at the early stages, it's about embracing risk, because that deal flow and that discovery and that structure, it means we can create healthy impacts and strong returns that are harnessed at the later stages of investment. It's exciting, isn't it? It's powerful, and we think it really can compete with mainstream markets. So as you can see, Roughly 30% of the fund would be working on the capacity building, and 70% would be on the scaling, which most investors already want to do, and they ignore the capacity building. So this enables us to be really intelligent in how these funds are structured. So like seed and angel, like venture and private equity in one fund structure. Now, it's also important to say about our technology, this is really about augmented intelligence, where the system, partly developed through BIGCrowd and made available for the SDG 360 Game Changer Fund, it's really about capturing these inputs from all of the stakeholders that you saw on the deal flow slide, the individuals who are managing, working with the funds and the investee organizations and our ecosystem. And there's a rating system and a mechanism to look at the opportunity, the competence, the impacts, and really to gather dynamically a great deal of data. So it enables us to do that also progressively. It's when one has the first million, or prior to that, when we're analyzing to make those initial investments, we're getting a better understanding of, are they going in the right direction or the wrong direction, or is there a market opportunity, is there a talent that is exceptional, and it enables us to concentrate those investments into those that have the greatest potential. So you can see here, and we've talked about this before, Transform Global, the bank, and the media and tech platforms that the bank will own, fundingtheGlobalGoals.tv and BIGCrowd, it enables us to showcase these innovations. It enables us to have relationships with global media organizations, with mainstream media, and with bloggers and others who want, and who we can involve as part of our ecosystem to tell these incredible stories, because it's really important to say and to be clear how important the storytelling side is, to educate people, but to inspire them. And people don't just want to see stories of success. Sure, they want them, but they want to understand why things fail, how to get back from disaster, how to motivate teams, how to lead. And the education that we'll be delivering as part of the bank and those educational and media platforms should not be underestimated, as well as the fundraising capacity of the bank for those entities that we are working with. So when you look at it and step back, essentially this portfolio structure, the risks start quite high and then they become low or lower over time. The returns on aggregate can be quite low, because a high percentage of those initial investments could fail or deliver modest returns. Some with little more than $1 million could deliver incredible returns. And we've modeled multiple scenarios for this portfolio structure, and they're covered in a separate presentation in detail. We'll touch on it in a moment. But what happens with this structure is the impacts. The impacts can be stratospheric over time, but even the earlier stage investments, they're making significant impact. So when you look at the aggregate, this is really, really a powerful model. And we think this model can be replicated. It can be replicated into regions and also sectors and subsectors, although we believe it has to be broad enough and large enough to work. If it's too small, if it's too localized, if it's too sector specific, it doesn't give the potential that this does. Now, I mentioned we modeled various scenarios, and this works on 2 to 2.5 times return multiple, which is really exciting. We think it can outperform that significantly. It can deliver much greater returns. Our target is 2.5 to 3.5 times, and even that is conservative over what we think could be delivered. So, thank you very much for watching this part of the presentation. We're going to touch in other presentations more about how a separate portion of the fund is utilized. So that is how we're going to talk about how the liquid portion of the fund is invested. Clearly, if there is a 9 billion fund and 9 billion is there, minus its investment into Transform Global and its operational fees, If that is there, that capital can be used intelligently, and that capital has to be used intelligently. And this is where we can amplify the impacts and amplify the sustainability of the fund, which the scale of this fund enables. So we'll be explaining that separately, as we've explained the model for BIGCrowd, the model for fundingtheglobalgoals.tv, the introduction to the structure of the bank and how it will operate, and also the fundraising and operational plans. So thanks for watching. Email me to learn more. Do get involved, stay on the database, and sign up on one of the websites. The websites will cross, so BIGCrowd, Transform Global, or funding BIGCrowd.net, transformglobal.co, or fundingtheglobalgoals.tv. You can sign up in all or individually. You can go onto our Facebook pages or our Instagram accounts, Twitter, and also our YouTube channel, fundingtheglobalgoals.tv, which you can search for and find. Thanks so much for watching. Okay, let's change the world together.